Hi everyone, it's Aid from Faith Photography, and today I'm going to take you through 10 of my favourite little Lightroom secrets. And here we go with the first one, blending panoramics. So let's pop over to Lightroom where I've got a few photos already made. So if we have a look at this scene here, my 24mm lens could get that, which is not a bad landscape, but I wanted also this foreground down here. Now you can do this with a tilt shift lens very easily, or if you've just got a normal lens, you can rock your lens, get it in the middle like that, just rock it forward so it's pointing down a little bit, and then rock it upwards so it's pointing up a little bit. Then you highlight all three of them in your view at the bottom. It doesn't matter which mode you're in, whether in develop or library, and then right click and you go photo merge panoramic. Now, in my case, it's perspective because the lens in a tilt shift gives you a perspective view. If you've rocked it forwards and backwards, it's like a little part of the cylinder. So you can go for your cylinder view instead. And if you're doing 360-degree photos with a drone or just spinning your camera around 360 degrees on a tripod, you can use spherical. You can have a play with these little sliders and things here, but essentially, just leave them as they are usually. Auto crop will get rid of any gremlins on the edges. Auto settings gives you what it says on the tin, a click of the auto settings button, and it creates a stack. So when it finishes, you end up with what looks like one photo. There you go. So it's blended it into what's called a stack. So the three other photos are below it, and it's on top. And it's a lovely big square photo. When I say big, big. So that's tip one. Rescue detail from the mist with Dehaze. This is one for you landscapers. So quite often we go out and we get this lovely scene which is above Ribblesdale. Well, the slider Dehaze, you can go all the way to 100 to get an eye bleed version of it, and then you can come back somewhere sensible and then find where your taste goes with it, really. So you are going from that in one slider. Dead easy. 3, edit the sky separately. Right, well, let's have a look at this photo here. So I've taken this in the same location, and yeah, the clouds came over and it wasn't great, but it's not burnt out. You can see from the histogram, so there must be something in there. After a little play, okay, I've added a bit of colour just to show you. You can get colour into it, but let's just show you what Lightroom can do now. It allows you, with the functions, to select the sky. So first up, let's just tweak the foregrounds to something we like. Okay, I'm not going to dwell on that too long, but you get the idea. I've just added a few fairly normal tweaks. And now for the sky, you go to your new mask button and select sky. Lightroom then cleverly draws around all the twigs and walls and stuff like that and gives you this lovely sky. So the first thing you can do then is as soon as you touch one of the sliders in the masking panel here, it gets rid of that's the mask itself. So let's just hit exposure. There you go. So you can darken it right down if you want to, but let's just darken it ever so slightly. And you've just seen the Dehaze button. Maybe a bit of clarity. Yeah, you can play away. I mean, I did go really creative. You can add any color you want. You can maybe tint it a little bit that way, and the hue color, you can make it go. In the old days, people used to use colored graduated filters like that. So by clicking that quick tweak there, select sky. The 4, use the color range mask to sharpen specific areas. Okay. So if we look at this shot here, this one, let's just reset that one. Right, let's imagine you wanted to sharpen just the rocks. Now, one way you can do it is to brush over them, but another way is to use what is now new is the color range mask. So if we click on masking, go to color range, and then maybe just draw a little square over some of the rock. It'll pop up a new mask there where it selected all the same colours. You may notice the sky is the same colour as the rocks. Might not have been the best example to show you here, but we've got a refine slider here. So if we go to the right, it expands its selection. Go to the left, it reduces it. So there we go. So getting rid of all the grass, or a lot of the grass, and you're still going to get a little bit popping through like that. So it's selected most of the rock. Now we will probably want to add a bit of texture to the rock. We may want to add a bit of clarity to the rock, and we may want to make it pop out, but maybe even add the whites so they really jump out. And there you go. So by using the color selector on a shot where you've got specific colors, like the rocks here are quite colorless, you can really quickly select it and edit it like that. Now, if you wanted to stop it affecting the sky, you can go to subtract in your mask, linear gradient maybe, and just click below the sky and drag it down a little bit, and everything above that line becomes deselected. So if we have a look at the mask, it's got rid of that. And also, if you wanted to get rid of the effect on these little bits of grass which are jumping out a bit, you can go to subtract again and brush, and then just gets rid of that effect off the grass, so you don't have these strange bits of grass. So that's pretty handy if you've got a specific color. Select the subject, add contrast by lightening the subject and darkening the background. So let's do a portrait for this one. So we've got Gary in this shot. Let's show you how. So you go over to your masking palette, select subject, just like select sky, but it's selecting subject instead of the sky. And look what a good job it's done. See, so much easier than the old way of doing things. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pop the exposure up on him for a sec, and then leave that for a moment. I'm going to leave that open and scroll down a little bit, darken the background ever so slightly, and with the highlight slider, darken the end of the tunnel there, and might bring up the shadows so you can see a little bit of the detail. Okay, so quite like what I've done with the tunnel there. Now let's have a play with, I might brighten them up a little bit. Maybe let's control those highlights ever so slightly. There we go. So really quickly, just by using select subject, darkening the main photo, and then coming back to Gary, just tweaking, adding an extra stop of light onto him, took an extra stop of light, or half a stop off the background, and now he really jumps out of the photo. So that's adding contrast to a scene. Now, just to extend that, what you can do is add contrast by warming the subject and cooling the background. So how are we going to do that? Here's the first way of doing it. The background is being controlled, well, everything's being controlled by this main slider. So let's cool the background down so it's got slightly forbidding blue. Gary's also gone completely. Well, what we can do is we can go up to the selection like that. So he's now a bit warmer and the background is a bit cooler. You could increase the warm look by increased saturation as well. So he really pops out now. So we've added contrast through light, and we've added contrast through warmth, micro contrast. Now, if you go down to color grading, you'll notice that between the shadows, highlights, and midtones, you've got these little sliders at the bottom, which you may or may not have used. Watch what happens. So if you want to affect just the shadows, you can do it. It leaves the other tones largely alone. So I might want to add a bit of darkness to the dark areas, and in the midtones, it's just affecting the sort of lighter areas. So you might want to brighten those up a bit. That to me is really a really powerful thing that is probably inadvertently in there, because most people will just use these sliders to add color. So you might want to do the old warm highlights and teal shadows kind of look. Invert the subject mask to get the background. So we're getting a little bit more advanced with this one. But let's have a look at this one of Philip Gascoigne. Right, so let's I'll just reset this one here. How do we do this? What we've done there, we've somehow created a green background, well, a blue background, and left him fairly warm looking. Here we go then. You can probably guess, first up, we're going to go to select subject, and it'll select, hopefully, select Philip. It did when I tested it out earlier. There we go. So let's warm him up a little bit. How do we select the background? There's no select background, is there? Here we go then. So step one is click on your mask, click on these three little dots next to it, where it says that, and duplicate mask. So mask one, I think you can, yeah, so this is Philip, we'll call it Philip. And mask two, double click on it, we're going to call it background. Just for clarity. Okay. So that's what we've got selected at the moment. So if we double click on it, oops, subject here. Now we've got these three little dots next to subject, and on those has the word invert. There we go. So if you look at the mask now, it's inverted everything other than Philip. So what can we do now? We can double click on effect, and that will zero everything. So this little double click on effect there. So to make the background go play away, go a bit darker so Philip stands out, you might want to clarity, or you can use the hue slider to make it any color you like. How's that? So the power that these new masking tools bring is pretty incredible. It's a bit odd they haven't got the select background, but that little technique there is quite handy. So you duplicate selecting the foreground, then you go to this little three dots here, and it's got the word invert, and you choose that. If you go to your presets panel, there's now all these styles you can add. I love the cinematic ones. So I often start with these. I just look at them and go, right, hover, potentially, I like that one. So just remember 5 was quite cool. So as you go down, you can just get, it's all about the color really. It's less about the main edit, it's what color they're editing. Well, they're going to, become, oops, I've clicked on that, so that's the default there. So I quite like number 5 as a start point. What you'll find is it'll have done some crazy stuff in the settings over here, and then you can go and just do your own thing. Well worth exploring those. It can save you a lot of time, and it can give you quite an individual look. You can develop a style from them. You can add wonderful effects and mattes with curves. Curves is a massively powerful tool. So just with this plain photo of Andy here, let's close that down. Here we go. So the tone curve has a few different options at the top. It's usually set to either this or this, where when you lift the curve up, you click on it and lift it up, things brighten. If you take it down, it darkens. We probably all know that. And if you want that matted look, where nothing is white and nothing is black, you can grab the end of these things and drag them up a little bit and down a little bit. And that's where you get that sort of fashion-y kind of matte look. So nothing there is quite black, and nothing there is. Some cinematics are very flat, like that. I mean, I don't get it myself, but it's quite popular. I mean, you probably have to eke some detail out with the midtones there, but so that's how you create mattes. But more than that, let's put it back where you can right click on it and reset all channels. If you wanted to add a bit of blue, you click on the blue one, and with a colored one, if you have yellow on one side and blue on the other, so if you wanted to add a bit of blue, you can drag it up and that adds blue. But if you wanted to add yellow in the highlight, you can grab the other end and drag it down. So you get this blue-yellow look. So just click it on and off. And this is a way you can start to introduce color with ultimate control. I mean, if you pull this up, the blacks will all turn blue. If you pull this down, the highlights will all turn slightly yellow. Or let's create a virtual copy. That's it. You can do the same with cyan, and so red. So that's probably working a little bit. So maybe you want to add cyan, and in the highlights you want magenta. So you go leave that there and go to the green one where the magenta lives. Drag this down here to add magenta to the highlights. And how far down you go is how far into the histogram it digs. So getting to know your curve is a massively powerful tool. I mean, let's pop back to one of these ones of Gary we did earlier. So if, let's say we wanted to just add a bit of blue into those shadows. There you go. Add a bit of yellow into those highlights. Just leave it alone. So it's dead easy to use. So those are my top 10 tips for Christmas 2021. I hope you found them helpful. Some are brand new, some are obvious, some hopefully will help you develop new styles and looks in your work in 2022.